Steve Jobs was born on February 24, 1955 in San Francisco, California, and was adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs. Steve's mother was an accountant, and his father was a machinist who fixed cars as a hobby. Steve knew how to read when he entered kindergarten. He said his two favorite things to do in kindergarten were to read books and go outside and chase butterflies. He was not interested in school much until he entered 4th grade and had Mrs. Hill as his teacher. She offered him many incentives to learn. He did so well in 4th grade that he was able to skip 5th grade and go right to middle school. As Steve grew up, he became increasingly curious about the world of electronics that filled his neighborhood's garages. He often watched his father building and repairing things. Steve's dad gave him a workbench space in the garage and taught him how to build things, take them apart, and put them back together again. Steve became very interested in how things worked and were built. He learned that through exploration, he could understand very complex things. When Steve arrived in Homestead High School, he enrolled in a popular electronics class. His electronics teacher recalled a time when Steve called up Bill Hewlett himself, co-founder of Hewlett-Packard, to get spare parts for his homework. As it turned out, he even received a summer job at HP's factory. Steve Jobs met Steve Wozniak, nicknamed Woz, and discovered they had many things in common. In 1976, Jobs and Wozniak formed Apple Computer Company. They took a risk to start the business by raising $1,300 to invest by Jobs selling his Volkswagen microbus and Steve Wozniak his special calculator. Steve Jobs became an entrepreneur at the age of 21. These two gentlemen faced a huge obstacle in the computer market. In the 1970s, most computers were so large that one could fill a room, and they cost so much that consumers could not afford to buy them. Jobs and Wozniak designed their computers to be sold to individual users who would demand their product. They created personal computers. When the Apple I entered the marketplace, consumers were presented with a smaller, cheaper, and affordable option. Their first model earned them $774,000. 3 years after they released their second model, the Apple II, sales had increased 700% to $139 million. In 1980, the company became a publicly traded company with a market value of $1.2 billion on the very first day of trading. Jobs has been very successful in business. He was always willing to take the risks involved with introducing products into the marketplace. The Apple III computer suffered technical and marketing problems. Jobs and Wozniak decided to remove the product from the market, improve the product, and reintroduce later. In 1983, Jobs unveiled the Lisa. It was designed for people who did not have many computer skills. It did not sell well. Competition from other computer firms also caused Apple to struggle. Always persevering, Apple introduced the Macintosh in 1984. It didn't sell well at first to consumers. In 1985, Jobs resigned from the company he had helped start. Did he quit? No. He hired some of his former employees and started Next. The Next machine never caught on because it was too costly, had a black and white screen, and could not be linked to other computers or run common software. So, Steve Jobs then purchased a small computer animated company called Pixar from filmmaker George Lucas. 9 years later, Pixar released Toy Story. Other movies that came out included Toy Story 2, A Bug's Life, and Monsters, Inc., which were all very successful. In 1995, Apple purchased Next Software for over $400 million, and Steve Jobs returned to Apple as a part-time consultant and chief executive officer. The following years saw the unveiling of the iMac, iBook, iPad, iTunes, iPhone, and iPad. Steve Jobs suffered with cancer for several years before his death on October 5, 2011. Do you think consumers are aware of and appreciate the products he brought to the market? Just ask anyone holding an iMac, iPhone, iPad, or listening to music they downloaded from iTunes, and you'll have your answer.